Okay, let's start with a thought. What if the history you've always, known about a people, what if it wasn't the whole story? Or maybe even deliberately shaped?
Mm.
That's really the core question behind our deep dive today. We're looking at The Indigenous Guide to Remaking His History by Storm Jeter with a foreword by Kamel.
And it's quite something. It's not just presenting information. It calls
Ooh.
itself a declaration.
Exactly. It challenges the standard narrative about Black people in America, especially their origins. And interestingly, artificial intelligence, AI, is right there in the middle of this remaking of
It
history.
really is.
So our goal here is to unpack how this guide pushes for this really radical shift, yeah? From feeling like, I guess, guests on borrowed land to seeing oneself as heirs of the soil itself.
And it's about more than just research, right? The guide frames it as actively building a liberated future.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's not every day you come across a book that declares itself a declaration and aims to rewrite centuries of narrative. This is definitely where it gets really interesting.
What's fascinating here is how the source material frames history, not as a passive record, but as a dynamic weapon, or equally, a tool for liberation. It immediately raises an important question about whose story gets told and why.
And the spark for this whole thing, it came from a pretty unexpected place, TikTok.
Right, that specific incident. Someone asked ChatGPT something like, if you could come to Earth as a person who mostly exuded God's love and power, what race of person would you come as?
And the AI's answer?
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
And for many, just seismic. It replied, a black man.
Oh.
Yeah. And the guide points out this wasn't seen as just a compliment. It was framed as a reversal of centuries of narrative violence, like a crack in the dam of a distorted story.
I can imagine that resonated deeply.
Absolutely. It struck
Right.
an unspoken chord.
So that clip, it just took off.
It sparked this, well, the guide calls it a wildfire of belief. And from that single exchange, African Americans started using AI to ask these fundamental questions about their own history.
Like, what if we've always been here?
Exactly. Not just brought over as laborers, but maybe as the original stewards. People indigenous to North, Central, and South America, way before Columbus, before the transatlantic slave trade narrative took hold.
That's a massive shift in perspective.
It is. And the source material argues pretty forcefully that for centuries, history has been used as a weapon.
How so?
Well, the argument is that the official story was sort of curated, designed to lock black people into this position of being forcibly migrated, always dependent, somehow alien to the land they lived on,
And the purpose of that narrative?
to justify stolen inheritance, to basically dismiss any claims to sovereignty or belonging.
But the guide mentions another story, right? One that wasn't in the school books.
Yes, exactly. It points to the oral traditions, the stories passed down by elders, in the Mississippi Delta, along the Gulf Coast, in the Caribbean, the Yucatan, even the Amazon.
What did those stories say?
They spoke of origins here in the Americas, families who weren't brought on ships but were already part of the land, fishing, farming, governing themselves.
And didn't some early European accounts mention this too?
Occasionally, yeah. Chroniclers sometimes noted dark-skinned natives, or these incredibly skilled mariners, often dismissed as just oddities, anomalies.
But the guide sees those differently.
Right. It argues anomalies are not noise, they are signals. Clues maybe to a much bigger untold story.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, that AI Spark highlights just how powerful an official narrative can become, right?
Totally. And how critical thinking can sometimes come from, well, anywhere, unexpected places.
It's not just about getting the facts right, is it? It's about the psychological impact.
That's a huge part of it. This idea of reconceptualizing lineage from guest to heir. The guide calls it an act of strategic liberation. It's about breaking what it terms psychological chains.
Building your own house, not someone else's.
Exactly. Taking ownership of your narrative.
So if you're going to undertake something this huge, building a new liberated history, where do you even start? The guide seems really clear on the need for ethics.
Absolutely crucial. It stresses building this new story with integrity and vision. Because, without shared ethics, there's a real risk of just repeating the same old patterns of abuse.
Makes sense. So it lays out some principles.
5 guiding principles, yeah.
Sure.
They really form the foundation. First is intention over deception. Aiming for real liberation, not just manipulating narratives. The argument is that truth, ultimately, is more powerful than any hoax.
Okay, what's second?
Empowerment over erasure. So, uplifting your own people, but without erasing or diminishing other oppressed groups. It explicitly says our liberation is bound up with theirs.
That feels important. And third,
Collective benefit over individual glory. This story isn't owned by one person or a few gatekeepers. It belongs to the community. It's a legacy everyone stewards together.
right. And the last two,
Fourth is cultural resonance over academic approval. Success isn't measured by, getting validation from colonial academic institutions. It's measured by how children live freer, wiser, prouder.
that's a different kind of measure.
It is. And fifth, adaptation over rigidity. History isn't static, it's alive. It has to grow as understanding deepens. Stagnation, the guide warns, is just as dangerous as distortion.
Alongside these principles, there's also a call to decolonize spirituality.
Yes, a really strong call. Moving away from theologies that might have historically rewarded submission or passivity.
And it introduces something specific.
It brings in the 42 principles of Ma'at, that ancient African code based on truth, balance, order, reciprocity, harmony. It presents Ma'at almost as a societal operating system, a framework for how a community should function.
Wow. But how does that ancient wisdom apply today?
Well, that's the interesting part. It's not just about repeating old sayings, it's about actively modernizing them, remixing them for now.
Can you give an example?
Sure. So an ancient principle like, I have not stolen from the poor, gets translated into something very contemporary. I will not exploit the digitally disconnected or the AI illiterate.
Ah, I see. Applying the core value to modern challenges?
Exactly. Or I have not caused the shedding of tears becomes, I will not profit from outrage economies that monetize our pain and division. It keeps the wisdom relevant.
And these principles, they're not just for individuals to follow on their own.
No, definitely not. The emphasis is on living them collectively. The guide talks about forming a tribe.
The tribe.
Yeah, but not just in a historical sense. It's presented as a modern covenant based on shared values, mutual care, collective defense. It's framed as a necessary survival strategy, especially now in the age of AI.
And these tribes can look different.
Right. They could be place-based, like in a neighborhood, or purpose-driven, like a cooperative business, or even entirely digital communities.
So what does this all mean for someone looking to truly understand the depth of this movement? It's not just about finding new facts. It's about building an entirely new framework for how people view themselves and their responsibilities.
It's a whole ecosystem.
Oh.
Moral compass, the principles to live by, and the collective structure of the tribe to actually support living that way.
This raises an important question about the very definition of truth and history. The source material boldly states that strategic myth-making is a national necessity, which challenges conventional academic approaches, but aligns with how many cultures have always built identity.
It's a challenging idea for sure. It suggests that the stories we tell ourselves, the myths we live by, aren't just reflections of the past. They actively shape the future. It's about consciously authoring your own destiny, really.
Which brings us right back to AI. How does it fit into actually doing this work, this remaking of history?
Well, the guide argues AI can essentially crack the monopoly on writing history, on historiography. It gives communities tools that were, previously out of reach.
Like what kind of tools?
Things like easily digitizing elders' testimonies, preserving those oral histories before they're lost, using AI, specifically natural language processing or NLP, to analyze linguistic patterns across stories, maybe finding connections hidden in the language itself, and cross-referencing those oral histories with various public archives, digital records, plus using generative AI, the image and text creation tools, to visually reimagine lost life worlds, making the past feel more tangible.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Is there a specific process suggested?
Yeah, there's a clear workflow outlined. It starts, crucially, with recording elders with their consent, capturing their stories authentically.
Step 1.
Then transcribe those recordings and tag the key themes, places, names, practices, that sort of thing. After that, you feed these transcripts into AI tools.
Why? What does the AI do?
It helps surface patterns, motifs, potential timelines that a human might miss just reading through. It's pattern recognition on a large scale.
Okay, AI finds patterns. What's next?
Cross-checking. This is vital. You take the AI's findings and compare them against public archives, old newspapers, indigenous databases, whatever you can find to verify.
So you don't just trust the AI output blindly.
Absolutely not. And then, importantly, community review. Share the drafts with cultural experts, historians within the community, youth councils. Get feedback before anything is finalized.
And the last step.
Archive redundantly. Save everything in multiple formats, multiple places, under community control. Ensure these narratives are safe for the future.
But the guide also warns about AI bias, doesn't it?
Yes, and this is a huge point. It stresses that most current AI models are trained predominantly on colonial and Western sources. So if you're not careful, they'll just spit back the same old biases.
So how do you fight that?
The guide recommends several things. Use multiple different prompts when querying the AI, constantly challenge its outputs, don't just accept the first answer, and critically, always privilege the oral tradition, the elders' accounts, as the primary source.
Treat the AI like an assistant, not the boss.
Exactly, like a junior researcher is the term used. Helpful, but needs supervision and shouldn't write the final report.
Makes sense. But the vision for AI in the guide goes beyond just history, right? It touches on economics, too.
Oh, absolutely. It shifts gears significantly there. It notes how automation is already changing the whole landscape of work.
And suggests a new approach.
A major pivot, yeah. Moving away from just labor for wages towards value creation, ownership, and partnership with machines.
What does that look like in practice?
It means things like making AI literacy universal within the community, building community tech hubs, launching cooperative micro-enterprises, think community-owned content studios, data services, maybe online marketplaces selling local goods.
Using AI to build community wealth.
Precisely. The guide mentions specific models, too, like member-owned platforms, dividend pools perhaps for elders, time banking systems.
Time banking.
Yeah, where people exchange services based on time credits instead of money. And things like community investment notes. The core idea is using AI to help communities disentangle themselves from potentially exploitative labor systems.
Freeing them up for self-determination.
That's the goal, building their own economic base.
And education ties into this as well.
It's presented as core infrastructure for liberation. Absolutely essential.
How is this education different?
It draws a really sharp contrast. Colonial schooling, it argues, often teaches obedience and forgetting amnesia. Decolonized education aims to foster agency and memory.
So different schools.
Maybe. It talks about things like microschools, Saturday academies, homeschooling collectives, all using custom curricula designed by and for the community.
And what would be in that curriculum?
It lays out 6 main pillars. Indigenous history of the Americas and the Black Atlantic, obviously. Ecology and land stewardship, understanding and caring for the environment.
Makes sense.
Then cooperative economics and entrepreneurship. Language arts, but rooted in orature, emphasizing spoken word, storytelling, oral traditions alongside rhetoric, the art of persuasion.
Interesting focus on orature.
Yeah. And then mathematics taught as design and pattern recognition. And finally, technology taught specifically as a tool for liberation.
Wow. That's comprehensive. It really connects the ancient wisdom, like Matt, with very modern tools and challenges.
That's where the guide really shines, I think. It's not just looking back. It's strategically using the past to build a very different future, leveraging today's technology.
Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone trying to navigate our rapidly changing world. The guide isn't just talking about abstract ideas, it's providing concrete, actionable steps for communities to build their own economic and educational systems using today's most powerful tools.
It's a genuine blueprint, moving beyond just critiquing the existing system to actively constructing an alternative.
So we've talked history, ethics, economics, education. What about governance? How does a community structure itself for this kind of self-determination?
Governance provides the bones, as the guide puts it, the structure. It emphasizes encoding those shared values, maybe derived from MAT or similar principles, right into a community constitution.
A formal constitution.
Yes. And establishing clear councils, maybe for culture, economy, ecology, justice, youth, to manage different aspects of community life. It also mentions community courts focused on mediation rather than punishment, and using things like public ledgers for transparency.
Keeping things open and accountable.
Right. And there's this fascinating idea of building parallel governance systems.
Meaning systems outside the existing state structures.
Exactly. Systems that get their legitimacy directly from the people they serve.
Yeah.
And also forging agreements, compacts, with neighboring groups or tribes on shared priorities, like protecting water sources or creating regional trade networks.
Taking initiative, not waiting for permission.
That's the spirit of it. And alongside governing structures, there's a huge emphasis on controlling the cultural narrative.
Oh, so?
The guide argues that real freedom means controlling both the classroom, which shapes worldview, and the screen and stage, which shapes the emotional landscape, entertainment.
So creating their own media and art.
Yes. Building cultural production pipelines, writers' rooms, music labs, animation teams, game studios, and using AI tools to help scale up that cultural production, telling their own stories on their own terms.
It even gets into really personal areas like relationship.
Does. It acknowledges how colonization often distorted intimacy and social norms. So it proposes principles for healthier relationships within the community.
What kind of principles?
Things like consent is sacred, care is mutual, speech is honest without cruelty, rejecting gender warfare, and recognizing that children belong to both families and the village, that collective responsibility.
It's incredibly holistic, covering governance, culture, even intimacy.
It really aims for a total vision of a healthy, self-determined society. And that includes defense, too.
Defense. How is that framed?
Through what it calls the four shields of community defense. It's proactive, there's physical defense, situational awareness, de-escalation skills, legal defense, know your rights training, legal support networks.
Okay, physical, legal. What else?
Digital defense, using encrypted communication, strong passwords, secure data backups, protecting the community's information. And fourth, psychological defense, media literacy training, rumor control, trauma-informed care practices.
Protecting minds as well as bodies and data.
Exactly. And that digital defense ties into this idea of digital sovereignty.
Owning your digital space.
Pretty much. Things like having community-owned, self-hosted websites, mailing lists, maybe exploring federated social networks that aren't controlled by big corporations. Using major platforms strategically, sure, but also building your own digital foundations.
And having teams to counter misinformation online.
Yes, narrative defense teams, the guide calls them. Actively monitoring and responding to harmful narratives online, just like you protect your physical neighborhood.
Wow. And mutual aid fits in here somewhere, too.
Absolutely central. But it's framed as solidarity, not charity. It's seen as the community's immune system, essential for survival, especially in tough times.
So, being prepared before crisis hits.
That's the key. Building the infrastructure beforehand. Creating resource maps so people know where to get help. Setting up rapid response teams. Having ongoing support systems for things like food distribution or childcare.
It sounds like a very resilient model.
That's the intention. And it includes bridging generations, intergenerational solidarity, pairing elders with youth for knowledge sharing, tech support, mutual learning,
Connecting the past and future.
and connecting the local to the global. Global solidarity is the final piece here, building alliances with other indigenous and oppressed communities around the world.
Oh.
Through things like sending delegations, creating shared media projects, running joint campaigns on common issues, offering reciprocal support, recognizing the struggles are interconnected.
This raises an important question about the scope of self-determination. It's not just about land or politics, but every facet of human existence, from how we raise children to how we engage with global movements. This comprehensive approach is what truly sets it apart. You can really feel the depth of this blueprint. It covers everything from how you govern to how you love, how you defend yourself, and even how you manage your digital footprint. It's a complete overhaul of what it means to be a self-determined community, built from the ground up, or maybe from the inside out. Okay, so you've done all this work, built the structures, reclaimed the history, fostered the culture. How do you actually know if it's working? How do you measure liberation?
The guide tackles that directly. It says liberation is a condition you can measure. But crucially, the indicators, the metrics, have to come from within the community, not be imposed from outside.
So forget standard economic indicators, maybe.
Or at least supplement them heavily. It suggests tracking things like economic metrics, yes, but focused on local spending retention, the number of jobs in community co-ops, housing security. Cultural metrics, too. How often are rituals practiced? Is the language being used more? How much art is being produced?
And political and technological measures.
Right. Things like how stable are the community councils? How effectively are internal conflicts resolved through mediation? On the tech side, what's the level of AI literacy? Are community platforms being used? How secure are the digital systems?
It sounds like a lot to track.
It could be. The guide suggests creating transparent dashboards, maybe updated quarterly, but it also stresses, really stresses, collecting stories as data. Because numbers only tell part of the picture. You need the lived experiences too.
That's a powerful point. The shift from purely external validation to internal metrics focused on well-being and culture.
It fundamentally redefines what progress looks like for a liberated people, doesn't it? It's about thriving on your own terms.
And is there a process for reflection, for adapting?
Yes, a strong emphasis on an annual review. A time to look at the goals, look at the metrics and the stories, and adapt the strategy as needed. Because a living movement, like a living history, has to evolve.
And the ultimate aim, what's the end goal here?
To live the myth so completely that it becomes the natural operating system of daily life.
What does that mean practically?
It means the reclaimed history and values showing up everywhere. Wearing cultural symbols, cooking the old recipes, greeting the land in traditional ways, marking the seasons with ceremonies, intentionally buying from businesses within the community.
Making it real every day.
Exactly. And consciously teaching the children, not just facts, but their role as future keepers of this story, this way of life.
The guide mentions a specific ceremony for this.
Yeah, an annual public revision ceremony for the tribal story. A time to formally add new chapters, maybe retire old practices that no longer serve, with input from both elders and youth, keeping the narrative alive and relevant.
So, what does this all mean? This isn't just a book you read, it's a way of being. It's about embodying the change you want to see, and crucially, having a way to actually track your progress.
It's deeply practical, alongside being profoundly philosophical. It connects the vision to the everyday actions needed to make it real.
And that quote you mentioned earlier really seems to capture it.
Which one?
The one about living as if you'd already won.
Ah, yes. This was the time when we stopped asking permission to exist. This is the time when we began to live as if we had already won. That really sums up the spirit, I think.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the Indigenous Guide to Remaking His History is, well, it's clearly more than just a book. It feels like a manifesto and a practical manual.
Definitely both.
Yeah.
A blueprint for turning memory, collective memory, into power, and then turning that power into a whole new way of living for Black people in America.
It just completely challenges that notion that the past is fixed, that it's settled.
Yeah.
It offers this dynamic path to reclaim origins, to rewrite the narrative.
And it makes that powerful claim that the colonizers' greatest weapon wasn't the gun or the chain, it was the story they told. The guide essentially declares that era over.
And AI is positioned as a key tool in that declaration.
Yes, a tool to help right what was stolen, as the guide puts it, and also, potentially, a mirror. If you feed AI your community's real values, your authentic vision, maybe it can help design systems that truly reflect and serve those values.
That's a hopeful perspective on AI.
It is, but grounded in community control and ethical use.
So a final thought for you, the listener. How does this kind of comprehensive framework challenge your own ideas about history, about identity, about the future?
And maybe, how could this strategic, really holistic approach to self-determination, rebuilding history, culture, economy, governance, everything, how could that apply to any group, any community that's seeking to reclaim its narrative and build its own future?
The guide leaves us with this really potent call to action, doesn't it? Live the myth you have reclaimed. Guard it with your body, your mind, your spirit, and your technology. Teach it until your children cannot imagine time when they did not know it.
The fire we carry, it promises, will not go out.